Good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for February 25th, 2019. We'll begin with the appeals calendar, continued hearing items. Item number 1, 2017-248A, Long Island Expressway and 74th Street, Queens. We have received a request to withdraw this application.
After I reviewed the whole case.
I'm sorry.
I did the same thing.
Yeah,
Sorry, Commissioner.
made an argument, et cetera.
I had enough already written in my notes.
No.
Okay.
Item number 2, new cases, 2017-263A, 6266 West Broadway, Manhattan. This application has been requested to be withdrawn. Special order calendar, continued hearing items. Item number 3, 86755BZ, 66-15 Borden Avenue, Queens.
Okay, the community board submitted a new letter which essentially reiterated the position they took at their 2018 hearing. Compliance photos were taken by our compliance officer on January 19th, showing some portions of the site improved and other portions in need of improvement, with showing strewn trash, tire storage, broken pavement areas, peeling paint, and rusted chains on fencing, and planter pots instead of in-ground planting. The applicant also provided photos on February 1st, which show basically the same conditions. A landscaping plan was provided. I think it's a good start, but it still shows potted plants along the property frontage instead of in-ground planting. And I don't see why that arbor vitae, the really dense shrubs that grow to 6 or 8 feet high, don't also continue along the property line, the entire property line that's shared with both residential properties. The previously approved plan showed much more planting in that area as well, and the direction was to put in at least as much as in the previously approved, but we're asking for more now that we see the conditions. The property owner also submitted an affidavit saying that he would do the work described in the plans. I personally would like to understand the sequence of work to be done on this site to see if we can get the site improvement work done under the current application. So before we vote, since it's quickly approaching planting season. Any other comments?
Move on. Item number 4, 81387BZ, 110 Boren Place, Brooklyn.
We had asked for notice of hearing to be posted in the lobby so that neighbors would be aware of this legalization of a gym. We were provided a close-up photo of the notice of hearing, posted on a bulletin board, but of course from such photos you can't tell whose bulletin board it's posted on. I wish this applicant's representative would stand back when he takes the photos. We had delayed our closure of the hearing to allow neighborhood participation or neighbor participation, but we didn't receive any letters. I don't know if anyone will come to the hearing.
I did, council did send a sample to the notice of hearing, but if you're fine, it said a sample that we wanted posted in the lobby, and it was not what we sent. So if you're fine with that notice of hearing to the neighbors, then we'll move on with that.
I just don't want to drag this on, but
Okay.
This council really needs to listen to us when we give instructions. Because this is at least the second time, or maybe that we've gotten a photograph that shows the posting. We don't need a photograph of the posting, we need to see it in situ, right? Okay.
Okay, so you're okay. Item number 5, 22300BZ, 272 West 10th Street, Manhattan. We received some recent submission.
Recent as in this morning?
No, from the other day.
Oh, well, so let me just talk about what I know from the other day.
It was the letter from the
Yeah.
opposition.
So opposition council at 6 PM on Friday, that one,
Yes, sorry.
stated that they withdraw their opposition to the project. So I assume this relates only to the opposition concerned about the lot line windows on the adjacent property. And so the community board's further submission may be moot now. So that's the part, but it's the community board, so I do want to at least acknowledge the community board because they were obviously lobbied by the neighbors, but this is the community board's comments. So the community board provided a further submission that requests that the school consider a triangular open area to allow the adjacent building to continue to make use of its lot line windows. The CB letter states that the lot line windows are original to the building, but that is inconsistent with the Landmarks Commission's designation report. The school's historic preservation consultant also indicates that the openings as opposed to the windows may have been original. We also have the letter from the Landmarks Commission. We have a certificate of appropriateness allowing construction of the proposed building. The drawings presented to the LPC in connection with the certificate of appropriateness application actually show the floor plans of the adjacent building, which is very unusual to see the adjacent building's full floor plans in an application for another building. And so it makes very clear that their lot line windows will be blocked. And also the preservation consultants included many examples where the Landmarks Commission approved construction of a new building that would block existing lot line windows. And we were just talking about a school that we had looked at a while ago where the building blocked what could be considered significant historic fabric. I don't think that's a landmark building, though, but still. And then we received into the record 4 letters in support, 3 from parents with children at the school. I'm trying to not talk over the siren. Maybe that's not possible. Do I just keep going? Okay. And 3 from parents with children at the school and 1 from a former school board member. We received into the record 1 letter from a neighbor in opposition and a petition from change.org in opposition to the project, which was referred to at our December 4th hearing. Both letters expressed concern about the impact on neighborhood character. And though there are over 500 names in the petition, not signatures, the vast majority of names are from outside of New York City, so of questionable neighborhood standing value. 1, for example, is from the town of Issaquah in Washington State, and another is from Cork, Ireland. There were many from faraway places. And so I'm going to skip over opposition submissions, and so therefore skip over the issue presented by the engineer for the opposition, because I think opposition is withdrawing its request to look into that. Ditto for the opposition's programmatic needs report. I think it's okay still. I'm not going to discuss in detail the opposition's programmatic needs report since they're also withdrawing that. And at our request, in response to opposition, the school looked at pulling away the south side wall from the adjacent building. But again, that to be responsive to opposition, but again, since they've withdrawn, I'd like to know if there is going to be any revised plans submitted that we don't know about. So now to the school's materials. The school growth chart was provided showing fluctuations in student population since 1990-2000 school year, with a delta of 20 students between then and now, which is hardly anything to notice. The most dramatic comparison years are to its low point in 2000-2001 to today, where there is a delta of 37 students over almost 20 years. And actually, I remember that this was the year of 9/11. Many people moved out of New York then, so you might have had people actually pull their kids out of school that year. I don't see this as a significant, the delta, and certainly not sufficient to be a driver of the expansion. You wouldn't make such a large expansion for that many kids. Most of the schools we look at project major growth over 5-year periods, and so we didn't see major growth over 20 years in this school. The need for the expansion in this case is clearly changes in pedagogy, which in all of our schools now emphasizes, when I say our schools, schools that come before us, now emphasize STEAM learning in laboratories and with changes in technologies, where there's so many more requirements for technological rooms that house the technology, places where the kids can study using the technology, and so on. The programmatic needs analysis was revised to give more detail. Room sizes are supported by school construction authority design criteria, and it includes an analysis of the inefficiency of the oddly configured lot and its influence on duplicative vertical and horizontal circulation, much of which is existing. And I asked, just based on that, what is the need then for stairs B and F? And would their removal open up useful program space, except to say that it doesn't appear that the school was planning to do work in that section of the school building, so removing vertical circulation would be a major disruption. And if they're planning on like doing this work while school's in session, because it's an addition over there, affecting the vertical circulation obviously would force a shutdown of the school. We have conditional DOT school safety approval. They requested some changes to the pedestrian ramps and the curb cut extensions. And that information should be part of our resolution. DEP's November 30th noise sign-off included an analysis of the rooftop play areas. And DEP is currently reviewing the Phase 2 RAP and CHASP, and we have a promised review date of March 1st.
Right.
At which point then the tech memo will need to be updated.
The tech memo needs to be updated with all the sections and sign-offs.
Okay. Right. Any other comments?
No, I think the applicant has been responsive to the questions that I had raised, which was more of clarification on the pedagogical, and I thought the submission was very thorough, and it helped me understand the difficulties with the current school structure, the layout with the historic and the various level changes of the existing floors and trying to accommodate. And as you mentioned, the spaces that are proposed, it is, in some cases, it seems they were less than some of the typical classroom sizes and other things we see. So it's, I don't think they're asking for too much, and it's not for increase in enrollment, it's just a pedagogical need.
Right.
So,
Anybody else? Go ahead.
Yeah, just very quickly regarding the engineering report, my understanding is the opposition is withdrawn now, so
Yeah.
there is no need to comment on the engineering.
Correct.
So-
I mean, it would only be if we thought they should pursue it, but I think we discussed this already at length, and so it would just end up being us having to have a conversation about another engineer's report. Meanwhile, you've been talking to the school's engineer and the architect about this subject, and I'm satisfied that the gym can't be
Just
brought down
to
any
put
lower.
it in the record that not commenting on the engineering doesn't mean that we accepted it. It's because it's not needed.
Yeah. On the engineering report that was
Yeah.
submitted, yeah.
Yep.
Anybody else?
I just
Shabbat?
wanted to add that I'm not sure if there's going to be an updated, a change in these plans that have been submitted, or perhaps the opposition and applicant came into a private agreement otherwise. But I just want some clarity if there is any agreement that's going to change.
Right.
the
Well, we
plans.
don't have to get involved in their
I don't-
private
any
agreement.
private
It could
agreement, I'm not
be fix
interested.
my roof, right?
Right.
But it's only, are the plans going to change?
Change.
So that's the only thing we're concerned about.
Done?
Yeah.
Item number 6, 1809 BZ, 250 West 54th Street, Manhattan.
So
This
normally I
application is
recuse, but this is being adjourned.
Yes, administratively adjourned.
Yes, okay.
Item number 7, 23114 BZ, 124 West 23rd Street, Manhattan.
Okay, we received a wrong date. This is This review is ongoing, but noise testing was done, and proposed mitigation of noise sources caused by the treadmills was recommended and will be installed. So we need a timeline on installation and subsequent testing.
New
The only-
cases, I'm sorry?
The only
sorry.
comment I want to make on this is that the applicant stated that there was only one complaint on December 11th, but we received a letter stating multiple complaints. The good news is that I don't have any evidence of any complaints after December 23rd of 18.
So we haven't received multiple complaints since our last hearing, right?
We did receive one. We did receive one letter that stated several noise issues that happened after the December 4th hearing.
Okay.
While the applicant did acknowledge one, they didn't acknowledge the others.
But
Well, it seems like
were
it's
the
stuck.
others, I'm not aware of others that were submitted after our last hearing in December 4th.
So Andrew Lee,
Right, that's one.
no, I was talking about actual incidents submitted by Andrew Lee. He detailed an incident that happened on December 16th, 17th, the 22nd,
I
and
see.
23rd.
So multiple complaints by the same tenant.
By the same tenant.
Okay. Okay.
I have a very quick comment regarding the language in the testing report. I saw that the testing was done just for one trade mill in operation, and they are indicating that if multiple trade mills
Right.
were in operation, that might increase the energy and it might be some noise. And then the report proceed to saying that in order to mitigate this potential concern, so we recommend such and such. So I'm not sure to what extent this mitigation would be sufficient. If they can just, when adapting language like this, if they can mention that in order to mitigate it to the extent that it's not gonna affect adjacent residents or some sort of language like that.
Right. But so we,
Otherwise,
so just to cut to the chase, personally, I don't actually care what the engineering reports say. What I care is we don't have any complaints from the neighbors. So if they put down the treadmill, put down this padding on plywood and so on under all the treadmills and it doesn't work, then they have to add more padding. So that, or whatever, they have to add more mitigation. So it doesn't really matter. The engineering report is making a recommendation to them and warns them that they may have a problem, right? But then they have to go back in and test again. They have to deliver to us a silent site where
Yep.
there's no
Yep.
acknowledgement upstairs that this is a use, right? So so the language in the report isn't that important to us. It's a different kind of review than maybe for a variance. Anybody else?
New cases, item number 8, 1059-84BZ, 943-61 Kings Highway, Brooklyn.
Okay. We have proof of service of initial application to officials and notice of hearing for this year. Sorry, this is new case, yeah. Community Board recommends approval. The application was amended and requested approvals now include an extension of time to obtain a CO. And when I say amended, it's because this was a postponed hearing and they were advised that they needed to amend their application to expand the request, and they did so. The materials continue to indicate there is a massage therapy room, so we need massage licenses. Fire department provided a letter of no objection following applicant's submission in response to fire department's previous letter of objection, so it seems like fire department's now okay with this. I'd like to understand what the acoustical measures to protect the adjoining tenants are, who are located adjacent to the spin studio and beneath the strength and cardio areas. And one of the questions that, because we read our comments at the last hearing, I believe, one of the questions Commissioner Shabeta had was, how long has the spin studio been in this location, and is it annoying the neighbors? Which is why we wanted notification to neighbors. But I didn't find any letters in the file from neighbors. Anybody else? Any new comments?
Next one.
Yeah.
Item number 9, 336, 98BZ and 337, 98BZ, 324, 334 Flatbush Avenue, Brooklyn.
So this is a legalization of an expansion of the use. There was an existing use that expanded. We have proof of service of initial application to officials and notice of hearing to officials. The notice of hearing provided by the board to the applicant, actually, this is a note to us in general, was actually incorrect, in that this is both an extension of time to obtain a CO and an extension of term. So the hearing notice to officials was required, was done, but not pursuant to our instructions. Sorry. No community board recommendation was provided. So we need it. The last update on the status of obtaining a CO is from December 2017. So I'd like more recent update, thank you. Now that the PCE is split on two sides of a retail space, so they expanded, but it's quite odd. So it's split on two sides of a retail space at the first floor. So I'm trying to understand how that really functions, that you go into these two separate entrances and join at the second floor, or I just didn't really understand how you operate a PCE like this. And in terms of ADA access to either the cellar or the second floor, it's very unclear what it is. They have these lifts, but when you look at the lift, it doesn't go anywhere. If you they don't control the space that the lift takes you to, and why would it be a lift that goes a full floor? So I don't really see how they work. And I didn't find fire department sign off on this one. Anybody else?
I thought, I actually had a question with regards to the zoning chart. The zoning chart for lot 14 does not include the total zoning floor area, and it is also not consistent with the zoning data and the plan sheet. So all of those need to be coordinated. With regards to the layout, I'm not sure how somebody's going to, there are some exercise studios that are available on the ground floor, and for the rest of it, one has to go outside and use the lift on the other floor, go to the second.
Yeah.
So the programming on the ground floor of the proposed PC seems to be more for childcare and other things, so it's less PCE oriented.
They need to explain, because I couldn't figure it out. Anybody else?
Item number 10, 12207BZ, 1630 East 15th Street, Brooklyn.
Okay. Okay, we have proof of service of initial application and of notice of hearing to officials. Community board recommends approval. A portion of, let's say, the applicant claims that a portion of the lot sits within an R5B zoning district. They need them to clarify on the site plan and the floor plans the dimension of the zoning district boundaries relative to the subject building and the subject PCE. I believe actually that the plot plan and statement of facts are incorrect, in that the zoning map shows the district boundary 160 feet from Avenue P and not 180 feet as are shown on the floor plan. So, which of course would make it a lot easier on us, but I'm not sure why they don't know this about their own building. The hours of operation, there's a request to legalize modified hours of operation. So the modified hours are Monday to Thursday, 5:30 a.m. to 11 p.m., 5:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Friday, 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. on Saturday, and 7:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Sunday. And we still need fire department on this one also. Anybody else on this one? Liz?
Bless you.
Item number 11, 2016-4141BZ, 27 Barclay Street, Manhattan.
Barclay, yes.
Barclay.
We, we have proof of service of initial application and notice of hearing to officials. Community Board recommends approval. We have DOI, but I don't believe this was an application for a change in ownership, so it wasn't necessary to obtain. We have a letter of no objection from Fire Department. This application includes a small 613 square foot roof terrace on the third floor that is accessory to the PCE. The findings for the 7336B special permit have been demonstrated, but the statement of facts is incorrect. The third floor roof terrace is not at 78 foot 10 inches above curb. That number is the elevation relative to a sea level datum. The third floor is something like 52 feet above curb level, and that should be corrected on the statement of fact.
When you refer to the findings for 7336B, do you mean that this application is filed jointly with the owner of the building?
Yes,
Yes.
and it was included, yeah. Anybody else?
Are there massage licenses?
Right, because there's a spa. Yeah, yeah, okay.
So you want massage licenses,
Yeah, because this is an ongoing,
spa thing,
it's an ongoing operation that's just shifting into,
public instead of just a
It's public,
private amenity for the hotel.
okay.
Next one. This appeals calendar, decision items, item number 12, 2016-4473A.
Okay.
72, 74 East.
I'm
3rd
sorry,
Street, Manhattan.
7274 East 3rd Street, Manhattan. It's Monday.
The requested notes that defer to fire department inspection of the fireproof self-closing doors and hardwired smoke detectors were added to the plans, which is what we wanted. So at the last hearing, fire department had said that they would inspect and were otherwise okay with the stair enclosure proposal. So the idea is that fire department would check whether any of the doors need to be replaced, and that those must be replaced at fire department instruction. We had a written sign-off from fire department in April, and we should recite it in our resolution. And I didn't find any further submission from neighbors, so they had talked about having a board meeting,
Yeah,
but there was no submission, so we don't
I
know.
thought I did see
Can you speak up?
I thought I did see another submission that the board meeting didn't happen, but I might have to go through my notes again.
Oh,
I
I didn't find anything, so if
Me-
maybe there is, I just didn't find it. Tony, are you aware of a submission from the neighbors?
I'm looking for it now.
No?
Let me see if I can pull it out.
Remember seeing that, but okay, I'll check.
Well, we'll check.
Not that we can get involved in their, whatever's going on with their condo board, not that that's
Double click.
something.
No, it was, some of the timing of this hearing was based on allowing them to have, to meet, so if they didn't meet, we can't, they didn't meet, right?
If you email me, I just want to look.
We gave them a chance. Okay.
It's too slow.
1 second.
Go- It's okay, go, we'll check when we get back.
Yeah, 1/15/2019.
I'm going.
It's okay, we can talk about it tomorrow, we don't have to hold it.
January now.
Okay.
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 Continued hearing items, item number 13, thank you. 205-15A to 14-15A, this is Hook Creek Boulevard and Fortune Way, Queens.
Okay, we received a revised restrictive deck for, quote, developing, operating, and maintaining the entirety of the proposed private road. The previous deck referred only to the cul-de-sac, so we had asked them to change it. However, and I saw that there was a possibility that this was going to be adjourned, and then it wasn't adjourned. Well, it should have been adjourned because the submission was actually very incomplete. I listened to the video, and I listened to the entire video and what it was we talked about doing. We talked at length about the restrictive declaration being submitted in advance to allow council to review and comment, but instead it was submitted on February 6th, when the last hearing for this was in late September, with one adjournment in between.
May I interrupt?
Is there something else? Because I'm going to say what the restrictive deck was supposed to say and doesn't.
Okay, because they had originally done the adjournment request, and then I spoke to Todd, and I believe we had a discussion. We were still waiting for fire department, but I wanted the draft restrictive deck done, because he thought he was waiting for DEP.
Okay, but he didn't do anything that we told him to do,
Okay,
so I'm
but
going to
that's
read what we told him to do.
So that was staff direction also, so I just don't want to.
Okay.
Now,
So
the
the
applicant
restrictive
throwing
deck
the
was
bus with that.
supposed to have provided that there is a sign demarcating the beginning of the Fortune Road, private road, to be installed and maintained by the declarants, their successors, and assigns. That the roadway is to be paved in a material that is distinct from the public roadway of 129th Avenue, that means the private roadway, and which will comply with all DOT standards. That development and maintenance obligations of the private roadway and sidewalks would be the responsibility of the current and eventual owners of the property in some sort of agreed fashion, that at the hearing we discussed would probably need to be an HOA. So the restrictive declaration would need to obligate to make an HOA if it wasn't actually making an HOA. And at that hearing, the counsel for the applicant said, well, you know, we have other ways of addressing this, so we'll look at other ways, because there's only 5 houses or something like that that would be subject to the HOA. Maybe there's an easier way to do it, but they didn't present one, so we're back with HOA. The other was that the applicant was going to verify that there are no utilities in the bed of the private road, which would also need to be described in the declaration, and that was not done. And that the applicant was going to clarify the current ownership of the private road, and that we need a separate covenant of restrictions on this property, since it is currently under common ownership, obligating it to grant rights of way, access easements to each property owner and the one to the other over the private roadway. We were also waiting for fire department review, because the owner is arguing that sprinklers aren't required and fire department is requiring them, and so this has been going on for too long. They should just put sprinklers in. I don't know why this is taking
You have the
so
fire
long.
department letter.
We have a letter?
Yeah.
We do? Oh.
Yeah.
When-
Dated February 19th.
Oh.
I think it's a similar objection they had raised to the 5 single-family homes that are fronting on the Fortune Way, the private roadway, and they are recommending that access to Fortune Way be provided, connecting to the east end of 129th Street and Hook Creek, connecting 129th and Hook Creek.
Oh,
No,
so those
I
are
actually
those
stand
two
corrected.
homes.
This is a new request.
Yes.
Before it was smoke detector and sprinkler.
Well,
and-
smoke detectors are always required.
Right, and sprinkler. This one, I think it's a new one. They're recommending that the 2 means of egress be provided to Fortune Way, and that it be connected to the east end of 129th Street and Hook Creek.
But that might be because they don't want to provide sprinklers. Either you
Because-
have access from a main road,
Because
or
129th Street is a substandard street, it's 31 foot wide, and I think that was one of the arguments, and hydrants are not shown in the cul-de-sac, and they need to be. So I think those may have been reasons.
Okay, I didn't see that. Okay, all right. So anyway, so we should adjourn this, but I want to make sure that applicant's counsel hears all those notes that I'm going to forward to our counsel, because no restrictive declaration or anything should be submitted unless it includes what we instructed them to do.
Yes.
Okay.
Move on?
Just one second. Okay. This one is. Okay.
Item number 14, 2016, 4296A to 4298A. This is 3236, 3238 Schley Avenue, and 580 Clarence Avenue, the Bronx.
We have a November 30th letter from DEP to the project architect that states that the drainage plan can be amended. And we have a 12/27/18 letter from DEP to the BSA that states that the applicant can proceed with the BSA application. I'm reading that as a sign-off. Is that a sign-off?
Yes, because we had gone out, this is one of the cases that staff and I had gone out to meet with DEP, because the issue was whether amending the drainage plan was feasible. And so they presented to DEP that it was feasible to amend the drainage plan, and they seem to be fine.
So that means it's in
Yes,
other
sign.
words, that's a sign-off.
Yeah.
Okay. So our prior comments were about, which were unrelated to DEP, our prior comments were about imposition of one of the houses on the required front yard, where I don't know how, it seems like it's penetrating the front yard setback requirement, and compliance with section 23-461A, which is the side yard regulations, and inconsistent lot areas. We had lot areas apparently were changed, but the lot dimensions, the lot line dimensions had not changed, so it didn't make any sense. And we didn't get a response to those three issues. And we had also asked for DOT comments on the sidewalk. So I don't know whether that went to DOT. We wanted to make sure DOT was okay with the continuity of the sidewalks.
I don't think so.
If you speak, you have to come to a mic because we can't.
It was another one of my GCL applications, and the applicant had said that it's going to go to DOB and DOT, I believe, for approval, so.
Why is it
Not for
going-
this one, not for this application, but for another one of my GCLs about the sidewalk continuity.
Oh, so DOB's looking at sidewalk continuity now?
That is what the applicant had said on my application.
So what, so in other words,
we
I'm
don't know.
confused. So we talking about this application as a possibility?
No.
Okay, so we, however DOT handles this, we reach out to DOT and we ask them, I thought we did that already.
No, I don't have anything. Okay.
Okay,
I'll double check on that.
okay. Okay,
Okay? Hold on.
yeah.
Item number 15 and number 16, 2017-16A and 2017-19A. This is Clintonville Street and Clintonville Court, and 15087 Clintonville Court, 2018-105A.
Okay. So we're reading these two together.
Right, and we're still waiting for fire department letter. Sorry. Mistake.
Well, we're waiting, fire department had objections to lots 23 and 24, so that's two houses on the lot. So I don't know whether they figured out how to overcome this. We don't have an update.
And the submission this morning was, my apologies, was a response to the board's question. It did come late, this regarding the GCL 36 hardship argument.
You can't submit something 2 days
I
before the
understand that,
hearing
yes.
and expect us to read it.
That came in this morning?
That came in
Yeah.
this morning.
It's
I
due.
didn't review it.
The
Yes.
dates of submission are when we tell them, and if you don't submit it, it's late and it gets adjourned. That's the result, right? I'll just read my comments. So a draft restrictive declaration was provided on February 6th. So we didn't have a chance to review it. We always instruct applicants' representatives that if it's related to these legal documents, they have to be submitted immediately, so our council has a chance to review it, and they do turnarounds. So you can't submit something without alerting council that these things were done. I read it really quickly, and I found lots of typos, so that looks like it was thrown together very quickly. The restrictive deck should be about both maintenance and initial construction to ensure that the roadway is installed according to the approved plans and complies with DOT standards for roadway and sidewalk construction methods. And then also, I'm not sure about whether our council was able to review the draft homeowners association and declaration of covenants,
No, I'll do it
because
today.
you weren't alerted.
I wasn't able to, but I'll do it today to get.
Okay,
back.
no, but the point is, if it was submitted and council was not alerted to
I
it,
submitted to council on February
She
12th.
forwarded it to me, but I didn't.
but February 12th, that was submitted in October.
Wait, the HOA was?
The HOA and the Declaration of Covenants was submitted in October, and if they don't advise council that it's submitted, it sits there in a folder because this was an adjourned hearing.
I'll take a look.
No, that's okay.
Also, in their drawings, I didn't find updated drawings indicating sprinklers in all the houses, which was one of the requirements. And then they just submitted the GCL findings, so, which we haven't reviewed. So basically, not really ready.
Should we be adjourned then?
Yeah, probably.
There was a draft restrictive deck that was submitted in the February 6th submission. I thought it was more revised, and that's what I forwarded to council.
No, so the restrictive deck was a first-time deck. The HOA and
Yeah, sure,
the other
HOA
stuff
with
were
meets and
submitted
bounds.
in October, no one knew about, council didn't know about it, and then the case was adjourned the last time, so, all right. So
Okay.
we've talked enough, I think
Okay.
this should be
All right.
adjourned.
All right, fine,
Okay.
okay. New cases, item number 17, 2018-147A, 3805 Beach 38th Street. This application is being requested to be withdrawn. Good.
Yeah.
Zoning calendar, continued hearing items, item number 18, 2016-4153BZ, 4701 19th Avenue, Brooklyn, and item number 19, 2016-4274BZ, 1411 39th Street, Brooklyn.
Wait, no, they're not.
I'm sorry.
19 is Project
Sorry,
Witness.
19 and 20 together, I apologize.
Yeah,
Number
18.
18, getting ahead of
18.
myself.
Let's do this over, start again.
Item number 18 only, 2016-4153BZ, 4701 19th Avenue, Brooklyn. This is Project Witness.
Thank you.
Separate, sorry.
Frightening me.
It's these two.
Okay. We have two letters of support from Councilmember Yeager, State Senator Felder, and Assemblymember Eichenstein. These are new letters. The last entry in my notes from our last hearing in August states that the applicant, quote, "will restrict the site in perpetuity to the proposed and keep it separate from the adjacent property," unquote. At the hearing, the owner's counsel stated, I want to actually say that, owner's counsel stated that the synagogue next door is not the same facility. Yes, it is run by the same people. Yes, there is an overlap. We shouldn't be penalized for that. This is an offshoot. Then on the other hand, not the same people running the facility. Happy to restrict in perpetuity for our use so that you won't be concerned about it being used by the synagogue, unquote. That's my transcript from the hearing. So please explain then the significance of the two not-for-profit corporate entities having now merged into a single entity called Project Witness. Now, all of the property by the entity that was the synagogue is held by Project Witness, including the adjacent site. Now, I am personally back where we started at the first hearing. The applicant owns both lots and is choosing not to develop them simultaneously, which development would obviate the need for most of the waivers, and by the way, create an infinitely better, more efficient, and more cost-effective project with less waste given to vertical and horizontal circulation. and also more in keeping with the character of the existing character of the neighborhood. A synagogue could even be incorporated into the combined project if that was what the desire of Project Witness is. But meanwhile, I see in this merger the dissolution of the religious institution entirely. Now we're just talking about an educational facility, which reminds that an application was refiled to convert the former synagogue site to a three-family house at DOB at the same time as this application was filed at DOB. So it's not like the synagogue was intending to continue to operate as a synagogue, right? And the applicant must note, that this standard of review is consistent with the board standards in other cases for-profit and not-for-profits seeking variances where a single entity holds adjoining property that, if developed in tandem, would reduce or eliminate the need for waivers. And to that issue, now the request is to decrease the side yard even further and increase the requested amount of floor area to accommodate the required enclosed flyer stair. And so now, I'm stuck here because of this corporate merger, and now I can get to the heart of the project, but I'm not sure there's a heart of the project to get to. The elevator no longer stops at the roof, so there's no issue about the roof being used for events. Given the enclosed stair, and if this is permissible, the trash and recycling areas should be moved under the stair, but accessible from outside instead of in the remains of the side yard. I'm assuming you have to fire retard all around the trash enclosure area. And I just want to caution the owner that the plans describe what I really think is mythological. And this all goes to the first thing I was talking about, that this is an enlargement of a wood frame, one-story house into a three-story public building that must meet fire code requirements for fire-resistant construction for that new use, and live load requirements for the hundreds of people who will occupy the building at one time. If I'm not mistaken, this will be a tear down, so no one could be under the impression that anything, should be under the impression that anything can be retained here. So I really just want to get that argument off the table. This is a tear down. We see houses enlarged where they want to tear them down and they have to keep a little bit so that they qualify for our special permits, but those are effectively tear downs to hold a few people in wood frame construction. And I doubt personally that even the foundations can be reused, but that's Commissioner Sheta's discipline. And then we had a DEP hazmat letter that requires a phase 2. So a phase 2 is not a joke. It's a very, very expensive thing to produce. And so I again would caution that this is a lot of money being spent, which was complained about at the last hearing, too much money spent on the programmatic needs analysis and so on. It's an enormous amount of money being spent to create a house, a building on the site of a house where you could create a building that will really be much better for the use and better for the community on property you own. There is a noise sign-off, but there are also open air quality issues. Others?
Well, I found that latest submission to be a little perplexing because they spent the previous hearing talking about how they were two separate entities that but for their own programmatic needs, needed to remain separate and distinct. And so then when we just asked that there would be some kind of a formal recognition that the project witness would always occupy that site in the form of a lease, what we got in response to that was this merger, and then a statement after the merger, they've merged, so there's no need to give you a long-term lease.
Right.
Totally disregarding the effect of this merger and what it has on this case. It's not addressed anywhere, not in the statement, nothing. They don't talk about anything. So I found that to be totally incomplete submission.
Complete.
I-
Mind-blowing.
It's a complete 180 turn from
Yeah.
what we were doing.
Great.
And that really needs to be explained. I don't know when they decided this. Did something change? There's a lot that needs to be redone correctly here.
It seems like one party must have balked at having to sign a long-term lease and being bound that way, and they just didn't think through what the ramifications would be of the merger.
Well, now that they have it, they can come up with a better plan.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, it's really much better. I would have to say, if you look at how much circulation there is in this building, this little tiny building, it's such a waste of money. They would spend proportionately less if they tore down the other little building and built a project to be proud of, because they're spending money on elevators and stairs that don't give them any space to do the work in, and the same exact number of elevators and stairs on a larger site would give them space to work in. They said they needed archival space. They don't have any archival space. This would allow them to have, even a museum. It could actually expand what this really should be doing, which is making open to the general public an opportunity to have really a Holocaust visitor site in. I think it's super interesting, and they should fundraise for it.
But it makes it curious. I'm curious to know what's really going on, and I don't want to assume that they're just trying to cut a corner by doing this a merger, but
A synagogue no longer owns a site. That's pending approval by the Attorney General's office, right? But if a synagogue no longer owns it, it's no longer a religious institution. It's no longer protected under the real estate, tax laws and so on as a religious institution. It's no longer subject to religious deference. So what, right? And we've been struggling with the educational deference on this. So they could make it a much cleaner educational deference argument if you took the entire site and you had a lot of other facilities that are consistent with their pedagogical pursuit, right? Anyway. Think before you submit is all I have to say about that. Okay.
Okay, next.
Yeah.
Okay, item number 19, 2016-4274BZ, 1411 39th Street, Brooklyn. And item number 20, 2016-4339BZ, 5018 14th Avenue, Brooklyn.
Okay. So we always review these in tandem, even though they're two separate sites. So it gets a little confusing in how we talk
Did you
about
want me
the
to call it
site.
separately?
No, it's just because they submit in tandem, they submit the same materials and all of that, but the agencies, for instance, DOT separates it as it should because they're different locations. So the lease for bus parking is now between the fee owner of the parking site, which was critical because the last time it was like a management company or something, a residential management company, and the school for a 10-year period. A restrictive declaration committing to off-street bus parking was provided, so that's in perpetuity for the life of the school. A pedestrian plan showing signs and crosswalks was provided for both sites. On the 39th Street site, there's a note that there will be bollards or planters on the sidewalk, but I don't see what the proposal is on that diagram drawing. It is, however, shown on the revised site plan that was submitted on February 6th. So, that site plan needs to be incorporated into the main set of drawings. That's a note to our council. But the site safety plans that were provided should also be incorporated into the set of drawings that we stamp. And I just want to make sure that the bollards are added to the site safety plan on 39th Street so that there's no confusion. We really need those bollards on the sidewalk, and DOT appears to be okay with the idea. So I didn't see revised plans submitted that show sound attenuation at the window walls and the word alternate means of ventilation as indicated on the required DEP plans. So just let me finish. So it indicates sound attenuation, but DEP requires that an alternate means of ventilation be provided, and that's not on the plan.
Okay. I'm gonna check.
Our
notes.
So the revised site plans also need to show the closure of the existing curb cuts and sidewalk corner conditions that are required by DOT. It's just not showing curb cuts, but it doesn't say close up existing curb cut, which it has to, otherwise there's no acknowledgement that you have to do anything. There is a January 11th DOT school safety conditions sign-off letter. Its conditions, which are quite long, should be incorporated into our resolution. Those include closing the curb cuts and this bulb out on 39th Avenue. And let's see. Sorry, there's anything else here. Yeah, and then they had conditions about the size of the crosswalks and so on the 14th Avenue site. Anybody else on this? So this is really just picking up the loose ends, but there are still loose ends.
Okay. So no further. And we did receive a final EAS, so,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So a final EAS that is signed off now?
It includes all the relevant sign-offs. That's what you mean by final.
When you say relevant sign-offs, it takes into account what was directed by the agency.
Yeah, so at the end of the final EAS, the applicant appends all of the agency sign-offs and the conditional sign-offs, yeah, right.
And incorporates them into the, right. Okay,
So then, I have to get the plans.
okay.
Item number 21, 2016, 4335BZ, 220, 21, 137th Avenue, Queens.
Okay. In response to board comments, an alternative plan was provided for an 18-foot wide home. This allows now for a 4-foot front yard along the long dimension and a 3-foot side yard. The other front yard is complying at 18 feet or, depending on how you, or 12-foot 9 to the widening line, depends on how you measure it. And the other side yard exceeds the requirements at 32 feet. The alternative is 1,620 square feet. There is no occupied attic, so as I understand it, you don't get the 20% bonus, known as the attic bonus, for area under a splay. That's the whole thing about the splay, that you put it under an attic, so I don't see how you get that. So if that is the design, then the project is overbuilt by about 70 square feet, which would be 50 square feet if you include the 300 square feet for the garage. We had directed the applicant to eliminate the floor area waiver, so this is almost it, if it's corrected, or they put some floor area in the attic. I'm therefore confused, actually, by the letter from the broker stating that 18-foot wide houses are less desirable than 22-foot wide ones. Is this alternative not now the proposal? I just didn't understand. It seemed like contradictory. And also, the area study shows there are many houses in the 17 to 18-foot wide range on 2,500 lots, some built as recently as 2006, so it's obviously an area standard and a marketable standard. It was in 2006, so. Anybody else?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, generally, we don't compare, the analysis did look into interior lots also. Generally, we don't compare interior lots when we are reviewing corner lots. And when looking at these interior lots, there were like several interior lots that were less than 25 feet wide and had buildings that were about 18 feet or less. So what is proposed here, 18 feet, seems pretty reasonable. And I'm not sure where that real estate letter comes from.
Anybody else?
I thought that 18 feet was certainly reasonable if you pick apart their lot study. They're talking about the building frontages or the width of the building, and they're not really tying it into the lot size. They're just giving you all of that information, but if you sit there and you manipulate the data and you look at it, you could see that the 18-foot and 19-foot wide homes are on the smaller lots that are 2,500 square feet. So this makes sense to be only 18 feet wide, basically.
Anybody else? No?
Okay, item number, go on the next one?
Yeah.
Item number 22, 2017-8BZ, 356, 362 East 139th Street, the Bronx.
Okay. Sorry. Plans were revised at the roof level to respond to the fire department's comment, and fire department issued a letter of no objection. We have air quality and conditional noise sign-off from DEP. Is there anything else open in seeker that we know of?
Now open seeker, noise sign-off has been received, it says.
So, okay, so that's it. Plans were not revised to comply with DEP's noise conditions and need to be. So this is, they need to say a composite window wall noise attenuation of 33 dBA is proposed for the proposed project's southern facade facing the third floor outdoor play area, elevations of 28 feet and above. I'm just reading their comment. The proposed third floor outdoor play area should also be installed with an acoustic fence providing a minimum noise attenuation of 10 dBA. The applicant proposed to install the acoustic fence AF-6, an 1/8-inch thick liner manufactured by Acoustablock with height no less than 10 feet, and to meet this condition. And an alternate means of ventilation is required and should be incorporated into the building design and construction.
So I think they have the acoustic fence called out, but maybe not the other nodes.
Yeah, so maybe it's not that one. Okay, that's the only thing which they could do right now.
Item number 23, 2018-10BZ, 1238 East 26th Street, Brooklyn.
She just went to get her charger.
Oh.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
She called 23.
Oh, okay. 23 or 24?
23 East 26th Street, Brooklyn.
Yes, it's 24. Oh, all right, anyway. So East 26th Street. The second floor was pulled back. Oh, sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. So, okay, the requested changes were made to the roof line.
I'm okay with it.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Item number 24, 2018-58BZ, 1182 Broadway, Manhattan.
The acoustical details were keyed into the plans as requested, so that's it.
Sorry, okay on this one?
Yeah.
Item number 25, 2018-64BZ, 2018-65A, 725 Mobile Road, Queens.
Okay, sorry. I have to say right off, in kind of in light of the other application we just talked about, I'm still having trouble on the issue of self-created hardship, which to my mind has not been adequately addressed. We discussed the subject at length in the review session, the last review session, but in the January hearing, but the applicant did not respond to any of those comments at the hearing, and then we ended up talking about the size of the building instead. Failure to discuss at the hearing does not mean the issue has gone away. On the contrary. The legal brief that was supplied by applicant's counsel in December actually didn't persuade, and I said that before, that the self-created hardship finding is overcome by deference. Applicant's counsel cites to a single case that does not support its assertion, and then goes to the issue of the purchase of a substandard lot not being fatal to an application. As discussed at the first hearing, this is not a case of the purchase of a substandard lot. This is the intentional creation of a substandard lot, and then an application to enjoy a variance based on deference. We have since learned in another case that we spent a lot of time reviewing, that DOB's approval of a lot for subdivision in no way guarantees its suitability for development. So the fact of DOB's approval should not be relied upon here. As was stated previously, the zoning lot was subdivided to support the existing house, and the balance was made available to the synagogue. There are drawings that show it could work for an oddly shaped house. And tellingly, though the legal brief provided by applicant's counsel for this application didn't review self-created hardship cases, the legal brief for the next case that comes up, prepared by the same counsel, did. It states, as discussed below, New York case law demonstrates that self-created hardships are those where the owner or predecessor in title actively created the hardship now sustained by the current owner. Right, so that's what we see here, an active creation by the current owner. It's not even a predecessor in title. Current owners, sometimes maybe there's an explanation for it, but here it's the current owner. And the same brief cites to several cases that are directly on point, including Patrick v. Zoning Board of Appeals of the Village of Russell Gardens. It's a 2015 Second Department case, where the court found self-created hardship when a lot containing an existing single family was subdivided to create a non-conforming lot. Here, the lot is non-conforming as to requirements for a community facility use, where a 15-foot front yard measured off the widening line, not the street line, so that's incorrect, a 30-foot rear yard, and 2 9-foot side yards result in essentially no building at all. So, and I want to point out that the as-of-right drawing that was provided to us is incorrect, because it measures off of the street line and not the widening line. So actually, it's basically a shed that can be built on the site for a community facility. To allow intentional subdivisions that assume variances to resolve the resulting zoning lots inadequacies would set a dangerous precedent, which, as also discussed at the first hearing, would undermine our findings in many, many cases and allow Cornell deference to supplant all of our other findings. And assuming we can get past the D finding, and I'm obviously not convinced we can, I have comments about the building, but maybe we'd stay on this subject for a while. So
Okay.
other comments about the self-created hardship?
I certainly do.
Speak up,
I
please.
certainly do. We asked specifically, I believe the representation by applicant's counsel was that there were cases directly on point that deference can be afforded to, I guess, survive a self-created harm argument. We've received nothing that related to that specific issue that we're all having. My bigger problem is generally speaking, when you brief a subject, you state the law, you state cases that are supported, cases that are different, how you distinguish yourself from cases that are different. And that wasn't done here, and there are cases that would need distinguishing. For example, in the matter of rehabilitation support services against the city of Albany, that's a New York Appellate Division 2016 case where a school who was opening up a type of elder care or disability care facility, which arguably can be given deference to some regard. They would have a benefit of deference. In that case, the Appellate Division found that they self-created their own harm. So how is this different? Why?
Can you go through the facts again?
It was a school that was portioning off a piece of their their lot, so it could be a rehabilitation or support services for, I believe, the disabled. Now, arguably, that would be entitled to some deference. Now, the Court of Appeals upheld the Board of Zoning Appeals, and stated that they created their own harm. It was a self-created harm, and inasmuch, it's not entitled to the variance. I need that to be distinguished from this for me to go any further. But, and it's not to say that this isn't a case that is known by applicant's counsel. And this isn't the only case of its type. So if they're going to be serious about bringing this type of application, they need to go through the law honestly, and not, I'm not suggesting that it's not honestly, thoroughly. They need to go through it much more thoroughly.
And I just wanted to add, anything else by anybody? I just want to add that there was focus on the D finding, on the self-created hardship finding that's in the zoning resolution. And when we read these self-created hardship cases, we have to be careful because some are using the common law, which guides those zoning boards of appeals. We have a statute. Our statute's very clear. There isn't any waiver of the D finding, right? And the D finding is broken up into two parts. And the first part talks about the hardship created by the owner or predecessor in title. That's one. But then the second one says purchasing the lot isn't of itself self-creating the hardship, right? However, but we're not talking about purchasing a lot where you're an unsuspecting purchaser and the lot was created in 1953. Those are our standards, right? If you come to the lot and it was created prior to 1961 and it's shaped like a little tiny triangle, you come to a hardship. It's not your fault that you purchased the lot and it can't be built on. And the board has consistently looked at those kinds of sites that way. But when the site is created by you or your predecessor in title so as to make it now something that has a hardship, that's the first line in the D, self-creation. And I want it because, and the reason I'm saying this is because the so-called brief that we were provided with goes on and on about cases that say, that goes on and on about the idea of being allowed to buy something even though you knew it was a bad site.
And if I may add, the way that applicant has interpreted the second sentence of D removes all purpose from everything after the comma in the first sentence of D. And when you read statute and zoning resolution, everything needs to have purpose. Otherwise, there would be no reason to have that first sentence.
All right.
Move on?
Yeah, no, I'm still,
You're still typing me, so I say move on.
okay. All right, so now to get to the heart of the matter, but I'm not sure why. The statement of fact states, and has stated that the side yard waiver won't negatively impact the neighbor to the north since the synagogue is in contract to buy the lot. Might be a dangling modifier sentence, but I need this clarified. Does it mean that because the owner of the lot is selling it, it won't mind that it's losing its side yard? Or does it mean that the synagogue is in contract to buy the entire lot? You could read that either way. And I want to distinguish reference in the statement of facts to the project at Beach 9th Street and Dinsmore Avenue, which it says, oh, look, it's a big building, there it is, and it's only 500 feet away. Beach 9th Street is a 75-foot wide two-way street, and the site is located adjacent to and diagonally across the street from buildings of similar size. Traffic and neighborhood character considerations are in no way comparable to the subject case. Obviously, Mobile Road doesn't look like Beach 9. The project was slightly revised, though, to create a second 4-foot wide side yard that had the bizarre effect of creating two sets of very inefficiently planned staircases that needlessly filled the site and could easily have been cut back to allow for more side yards. There's also something labeled library at the first floor that used to be a coffee room. Either of those functions could have been located in the cellar. And I just have to say that when we strongly directed, and I remember this was a very strong direction, that the applicant reduce the size of the building, that strong direction wasn't okay, add in a little 4-foot side yard on one side and keep everything else the way it was. So from my perspective, it fails on the D and it fails on the E. So, and I don't know if basically, I don't know if that there is an A ultimately, because I don't know that the deference argument can overcome all of those things, and I don't think it can. We found no case law that, and this applicant has provided no case law that says deference overrules everything. Deference is focused on the A finding, right?
And the E, maybe. And also, it could be applied to the E finding, I would say. The lesser variance finding, I think you can afford deference, like programmatic needs to, but I do want to say, and I think it's academic at this point, but the statement that when it doesn't negatively affect the adjoining property, if the applicant actually means that because the lot that they're currently building on is being purchased by the adjoining party, then it doesn't negatively affect that lot. I don't buy that, because that's a personal. And that personal moment, yes, that's true. But that person is not the lot.
Right.
It's not the area. It's not the community. And there needs to be, if that's what it is meant by that, and not that they're going to purchase the adjoining lot as well. I'm
Then
not.
we're back to the project witness kind of situation, right?
But
It's-
I didn't understand, sorry.
Sure.
I just didn't understand the end of that sentence.
If they're saying, if the statement means that because I'm purchasing from the adjoining lot, they're okay with it. It doesn't negatively affect anything because they're okay with it. That's a personal and not a lot related. And I don't think that is what the zoning, what the zoning regulations are interested in. If, on the other hand, it means that they're purchasing the entire property, which I didn't get that from the statement, they still need to clear that up. And if they are, then they don't need this type of variance. They have a lot of other things they can do.
So that's what you were talking about, yeah. So it depends on how you read that same sentence. And the first time I read it the first way that, the neighbor doesn't care because the neighbor's selling. But the second time I read it, I was in shock because I thought it meant that they're in contract to buy the house. So I don't know what the answer is.
I'm saying, but in my opinion, either way, it's not helpful.
Right. Okay.
I don't know to what extent comments on the revised plan is.
Right, because I had more also, but go ahead.
But
yeah.
I would just say, when the applicant states that they will add a note that the congregants will not occupy all 3 floors.
Tony.
Sounds like a
Let's
fire
just,
alarm.
let's
Fire alarm. Can we pause the recording?
But do you need to say back on the record?
Go ahead. We're back on the We're back on the record, and this is item number, still talking about Mobile Road. Item number 25, 2018-64BZ, 2018-65A, 725 Mobile Road, please.
So what I want to say is, it's not specific to the plan, to this plan, but I just want us to be aware of it, and I'm not comfortable with the idea of notes where they say the congregants will not occupy all 3 floors. There's no way to monitor. We need to have assurance of how these things are going to be delivered, and just a statement to that effect cannot be sufficient, and we need to think of ways how we can, in future, any projects that make these statements, we have a way of implementing it, and it's an...
Right, mostly we don't have a
It's
way of
not-
implementing.
Right, but there has to be then some other way of assurance. That's what I'm not getting the comfort level with just
No,
that statement. That's
no.
all I'm getting at.
I have no comfort level. But so, because, and unless others disagree, I know at the last hearing, we had 3 commissioners who were really concerned about the issue of self-created hardship, and this was not discussed by the applicant, and for me, it's terminal. So I don't think there's any point in talking about the deficiencies of the building, except to say that they were unresponsive to our request to reduce the size.
I agree.
And so tomorrow's focus will be just on the
Yes.
D part of it.
Yeah, right.
And so, again, there's little that can be repaired by statements made on the record tomorrow. This is a question of law that needs a much more thorough type of analysis. So I'm not sure how productive tomorrow would be to repair what's lacking in the A.
That's a fair statement. It is a question of law. And had we gotten a legal brief that was written like a legal brief, as if it was written for a court, where all the cases that are relevant are briefed and included, and you argue both sides, both the side that's working for you, and you distinguish the side that doesn't work for you, then we would be fully informed, and then we could make a decision based on that. But at the moment, we have what we have, informed by another case that submitted a brief, and so that's
It's
very-
also, it's a combined law, in fact, but it's not something that can be repaired.
Right.
By statements without us being able to thoroughly research it or review it in time. So I would say it's incomplete, an incomplete submission.
Okay. Okay.
Great. Next.
I was just finishing saying, I believe it'd be an incomplete submission by the way, how it's been submitted, and this is going to be the 3rd appearance on this.
Yeah, so I'm borderline on closing this.
I was going to suggest you close it and leave the record open with the
Yes.
idea that if they present a thorough enough analysis of the cases, that we might reopen.
Item number 26.
Wait, wait, wait.
Oh, sorry, may I move on?
Can you clarify, I'm sorry for the closing, you want them to do it by tomorrow, or do you?
No,
In the,
No, so a
Between now and
legal
the
brief
next
actually takes a lot of time.
Right, I
If
understand.
you're actually doing the work like lawyers are supposed to do, it takes a long time. So they will need to do that,
By
but
the
we'll
next-
close because if we're not persuaded by their argument, then we vote. And they've heard the comments from 3 commissioners. I can't
so you're
speak for
going
the
to
other
take
2.
testimony tomorrow? or-
I don't think there's any need to because
we
we're
just wanna be
going to the
clear.
heart of this matter.
But just
right?
to be clear, like there's a hearing tomorrow.
Yes.
They're entitled to come and present and discuss the self-created
Yes.
hardship and discuss whether they want to create an additional brief or withdraw or whatever. But at the close of that hearing, we may vote to close and leave the record open for further submissions, but that will kind of be the end until this issue is kind of wrapped up.
Right.
Clear.
Right.
Okay.
May I move on? Item number 26, 2018-99BZ, 275 Pleasant Avenue, Manhattan.
We also received something late Friday. It was
Yeah.
sent to you this morning. You
Oh.
probably didn't see it yet.
No.
But
What is it?
it's a letter from the next door owner.
Oh, we received a next door owner letter.
From Paul
Another one.
Another one.
Ellingers, dated February 22nd. It's in response to the submission by Richard LaBelle from February 6th.
Yes, we received that.
Oh, so you saw it?
You saw it,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, good.
So opposition counsel has withdrawn, though. That neighbor seems to be representing himself. We have a new letter of support, doesn't detail, it's just a letter, it's just a form. The subject of self-created hardship was fully briefed, as I might have mentioned earlier, and I am persuaded that there was no subdivision by a predecessor in title other than the city of New York that rendered the site unbuildable. The letter from the neighbor which I think is the one you're referring to, argues that the foreclosure of the subject lot was a conscious decision on the part of the owner to allow the separate transfers of these adjoining parcels. The board cannot look to the intent behind a foreclosure action, but it is true that we asked the applicant's counsel to investigate how the courts have viewed such intervening events on title, and it provided nothing. We asked them to look into it. They didn't do anything because we did have a question about that, but there was no response to that. So in sort of deference to the neighbor, it's true we asked and we got nothing. In reviewing the previously submitted plans, it looks to me like the rear yard is not 30 feet deep at the first floor, which is a dwelling unit. The dimensions on the drawings are very unclear, however. I think that it may be proposed on the first floor as a greenhouse, which is a permitted obstruction, in which case a note has to be added immediately to the drawing stating that DOB shall review greenhouse compliance with permitted obstructions in the required rear yard, as we, the board, are not waiving rear yard requirements. Any other comments on this one?
To the self-created hardship, I just want to say, this is the type of self-created hardship that isn't considered, that would be more analogous to passive, not the active type of self-created hardship that D is referring to. And this is in contrast directly to the case before this one today.
I don't think they call it a passive self-created hardship. They just state it's not a self-created hardship because it's not active.
Right, so it's a subdivision that was passive, not actively done by the applicant. And in the word passive is actually used in some cases, that this wasn't something that the owner or predecessor actively did.
Right, yeah, no, I understand that part of the briefing,
wouldn't
but
be-
I didn't think they used the term passive self-created hardship,
No.
active self-created
Well,
hardship.
so the courts have used the word actively done.
Right.
And I think that's but they've never used the word passively done. And had we seen, actually, that's an interesting way of doing a word search for a case where, because we had asked for information on what happens when there's an intervening government act, which you could argue is a passive subdivision, because I was just standing here and the government came in and built a road or whatever it is and took out of my hands the subdivision of my lot. Maybe that is how a court has described it, but we didn't get any
But
cases
is
like
it,
that.
would that be passive self-creation? When
No.
the government is doing it, then it's
Right.
not self-created.
Self-created.
That's what
Right.
I'm saying.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I wouldn't say
Oh, I
that
see
there
what-
is
yeah.
a term passive self-creation.
No, I don't,
Right.
I believe that those
was
two terms.
intervention by a government agency.
Yeah, right. Okay,
That's
a
what I
good
was
point.
saying.
This additional letter, though, that I don't think you saw.
Well, we can't look at it now, so. Okay.
It was my characterization that some changes are passive as opposed to actively, which create the self-created harm. So I
Right.
just want to clarify that
Okay,
I'm not
no.
speaking of a passively self-created harm.
Right, no, okay, yeah, understood. Okay.
Okay, item number 27, 2018-107BZ, 1441 South Avenue, Staten Island.
Okay. A traffic circulation plan was provided. I just need help understanding where the drop-off for the MTA and school buses will be for the existing school at Corp Commons 1, if it's modified the way it's shown on the drawings. So is this a modification? Will this be a different school and MTA bus route, or a modification of the existing one? That wasn't clear, like, do you take out the solid line and replace it with the dashed lines, or are the dashed lines just an additional route? And so the buses will come and go both in front of Commons 1 and the new school, or park at another location for Commons 1? I just need more on that. And also, it shows queuing for parents for the new school along the edge of the parking lot. Will there be a crossing guard that brings the kids from the school plaza to the parent parking zone? Because it requires that little kids are crossing an active, it's actually almost like an active roadway because it's the way that the buses get out, it's the way that the cars go and so on. They did provide a gate at the loading berth, which I appreciate, but I'm just advising the architect that the in-swinging gates won't work for, if you've got a truck in that location, it won't allow the gates to either open or close. But, so that's something that they need to address. Maybe it's a bifolding door or something like that. But the whole idea is if there was a truck already in the dock and it's time for kids to leave, they would just close the gates and the truck can't lock until the kid can't leave until the kids leave. Or if a truck wants to go into the dock, it can't go into the dock. There's some kind of a radio, and it stays somewhere in the parking lot until the kids load. And then, and then also, let's see, and I see also that a locked door has been added to the 4th floor corridor, which is ostensibly to separate the adult day students from the younger children. There probably has to be some type of alarm panic hardware on it, which the fire department and DOB would require because it is ultimately a fire corridor. Also, there is access between the new ventures, which I believe is the right name for the adult kids, adult students, and the lower school through the cafeteria. So we talked about security separation of the adults from the children. And I'm just not sure how they're working that out because you can actually walk from the commercial kitchen area into the cafeteria and then from the cafeteria into the balance of the school. So they just need to explain this better and explain how they're going to limit that kind of access. And we also had discussed adult access to the floor through the B stair, which isn't shown. The whole idea, again, is separating those older students from the little kids, and I didn't see that that was fully worked out. Anybody else?
I actually, with regards to the comments you raised regarding the parents' drop-off, I think many projects that we do review, they are on city streets, and parents drop-off pickup is happening on a city street. This is a private driveway where the amount of vehicular circulation on a typical city street is much less, and this being an office space, the hours of operation in an office compound is very different from a school one. So in terms of the location that they have proposed, and I think the issue of conflict that student would have with the circulation movements here will be significantly less than what we see in situations where sites are located on a city street where parents are dropping off, picking up at the street side sidewalk. But I mean, that was just my feeling of that. With regards to the bus, I thought they said that there will be 2 sets of 4 buses. 2 will kind of continue the existing path, and 2 new will kind of bifurcate off and will go to the new school space. So instead of all 4 buses making the left turn to go to the existing school, there'll be 2 that will continue to the new and 2 will go to the existing, but that's a clarification they can provide. That was just something they had stated at the last hearing.
And I remember that the owner stated something about them adding another MTA bus route,
Right.
but I wasn't clear that that's what happens. Does the bus route now just go to this school, or is that a new route because it's coming from another part of Staten Island and servicing another part? I didn't understand why they were adding a whole new MTA bus route. Okay. Anybody else? Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. So DOT School Safety is still reviewing this. Please understand that the tech memo was signed off by OER. But They still wanted to have some input. There were some questions that.
Who they?
DOT School Safety.
Okay.
Had some questions about sidewalks. And this morning, actually, they asked the questions, and I sent it to the applicant. They sent a site plan just to me with some markings on it, which I sent to School Safety, and then School Safety had sent back some more markings of questions on the site plan, so the applicant has to respond to that. They're aware of it, but we don't have, School Safety wants to weigh in, but we just don't have the additional comments because they still have some questions. But we'll try to get some response by tomorrow.
Okay. Right, so that, one of the reasons that I keep asking all these questions is because DOT, we know, had concerns about this, and though I'm not a transportation engineer, I'm just imagining some of the issues, and that's why, one of the reasons that I'm asking, so.
So we'll see if we could get comments from them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Move on.
yeah.
New cases, item number 1, 2017-301BZ, 467 Marcy Avenue, Brooklyn.
Just a second. Sorry. What? Oh, no. I'm sorry, I had a lot of technical difficulties on my document, and now I'm not finding the section. Oh, here we go, sorry. My Word document was corrupted, and all of a sudden, everything vanished. Don't you love that? Okay. All right, ready. So this is a legalization. We have proof of service of initial application to officials and notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. There are also photos showing postings made in the building lobby, which, by the way, were very clearly postings in the building lobby. The community board's, quote, executive committee provided a no objection letter. It's not a recommendation of the full board, and I think maybe it's their way of coming to the conclusion that they're waiving the hearing. This PCE is in what's known as a permanent tent structure, the legality and safety of which is regulated by DOB and fire department. So I didn't see anything from DOB saying they're okay with how this thing works in terms of building code. But fire department is not at all pleased and issued a letter of objection on February 19th, stating in part, the structure is constructed of rigid frame with an interior and exterior membrane covering with fiberglass bat insulation. We request that the applicant clarify if the structure is permanent as stated in the statement of facts, or as described in the alteration type 1 application, the structure is listed as temporary, which is normally how you think of these tent structures. The department objects to this application and respectfully requests that the board deny, based on the fact that the structure is constructed of combustible material, no fire suppression systems are installed, and the use would be in conjunction with a trade school at the premises, and I'm not sure what that is, so we'll let fire department comment further. I also don't know about the legality of providing the nearest toilet facilities about 600 to 800 feet from the PCE, but I note that our compliance officer's site visit shows that there are temporary toilet facilities in one of those fancy trailers near the PCE. Again, I don't know if DOB considers that a permanent solution. The trailer is not shown on the floor plans provided, so it's not clear where it is relative to the tent. Emergency egress appears to be direct through a front yard to Marcy, but the floor plans are very unclear about point of entry, et cetera. The floor plans are really barely floor plans. I can imagine, though, how difficult it must be to find a space suitable for a trapeze school that needs incredible height, and whereas trapeze perform most of the time anyway, except in a tent, a circus tent. but DOB and fire department need to sign off on it. Our compliance officer also, on that site visit, found there were what were described as decommissioned acetone and nitrogen tanks on site. I don't know what that means, and we don't have DOI. Any other comments on this?
Just so I understand, since it's not a permanent structure, in the app.
They said it's a permanent structure.
We don't know.
Right,
in their
no,
materials.
Because of the construction material that is being used, is it therefore considered not permanent by DOP standard and therefore
That's a
an
so-
odd one?
So you can file to install a temporary structure, which are normally tents, right? But we also have examples of tennis courts that are on the roof of something, that are enclosed, permanent, flexible, tent-style structures, right? They sit there for decades. We had one not too long ago, right? So how they accomplish permanence like that, and in the case of sitting on top of a roof of a building, obviously that's a real fire concern that needs to be addressed. So the problem here is it looks like they put up a circus tent, which the circus tents get those temporary permits somehow, but then they come down in a week or two. And so, yeah, it's a temporary installation. That's not this, though. Anybody else?
Item number 2, 2018-96BZ, 145 Ludlow Street, Manhattan, the legalization of a PCE also.
Indeed. We have proof of service of initial application to officials and of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. Photos provided show that notice was posted in the building lobby, clearly notable as the building lobby. Community board had no objection. We have 4 letters in support and 1 strong letter in opposition, stating that the music in the gym causes glasses in his second floor unit to vibrate, and that the gym operators don't maintain the sound levels to avoid this from happening. So the applicants need to address this. We do have DOI. We have a letter of no objection from the fire department. I didn't see how this PCE is ADA compliant. And the acoustical detail that was provided looks very convincing. It has springs and so on. So I'm not understanding why music vibration is discernible on the second floor unless it is incredibly loud, or the isolation pads and spring hangers were not installed at all, or as shown on the drawings, or there are uninsulated penetrations, which actually was the cause of one of our PCEs having so much trouble that the sound attenuation measures were penetrated, and that just allows all the sound to go through those holes. Anybody else?
Item number 3, 2018-117BZ, 2060 63rd Street, Brooklyn.
We have proof of service of initial application to officials, but I don't find proof of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors, and we must have that to proceed. Although there's a letter of support on, that was put on our forms submitted, so how could they get a letter, one of those official forms, unless they were notified? The community board recommends conditional approval. Meanwhile, we must have that notice of hearing. As a threshold matter, I fear this really is a tear down, as all of the floor joists are being raised, so the drawings have to be clear about the methods that will be used to retain the existing joists on the existing exterior walls. And a note has to be added that removal of existing exterior walls at floor joists in excess of those shown on the plans will void the special permit. The sections indicate the walls are masonry, so the joists have to be lifted into new beam pockets, and this must be indicated on the drawings and with notes and details. And we need dimensions and calculations on the existing exterior walls to be retained. I don't see how you get to 50% if the front walls are being removed. And by removing the front walls, the project disrupts the rhythm of the row. And when I say the row, the statement of facts completely neglects to mention that this is a semi-detached house on a 23 by 148 to 154 foot deep lot. an enormous lot. And because the site is in an R5, the as-of-right floor area is 4,350 square feet, which is almost 3 times the size of the existing house. Given the narrow but very large lot area and the fact of this being an attached house, the as-of-right floor area seems sufficient to me. When they were asking for a floor area increase. And that would limit the scope of the waiver to a straight line extension at the rear and a discussion about the impact of the extra floor in a neighborhood, the third floor, in a neighborhood where virtually all of the houses are semi-detached 2 stories with flat roofs or very shallow attic levels with dormers. At present, the full third floor sits back from the existing front wall by only 15 feet. I think it should sit further back and mimic the attic dormers that are typical of the block. And I neglected to mention that the community board had a conditional approval, which drew my attention to this. They recommended that the approval of the application with the proviso that the front of the property remain in the same sightline and character of the surrounding homes. So they're very aware of, as they should be, it's their neighborhood, of the character that is these 2-story with very shallow roofline attics. So I think it should, so that third floor should be set very far back, and that it should use the dormer vocabulary that you see on the third floors of or on the attic floors. So first of all, the drawings have to include the house to which this is attached, so that we can understand the effect of the proposal on the neighbor. That is standard for all of these semi-detached houses. And though the rear yard will be legal because it's such an enormously deep lot, the full height rear extension will be the only one of its kind anywhere and will deprive adjacent gardens of sunlight. And I noticed that this is unlike many that we see. There are active, really green gardens growing in the adjacent houses where you can see actually that they prepare for the winter by moving the soil into different pots and things like that. You can see they're actually growing gardens. So it will deprive the adjacent gardens of sunlight. And the enormity of this house against its little neighbors and how it will overtake the existing structure is very evident in the right side elevation drawing. The project really needs to be more respectful to win my support with respect to neighborhood character. And those are my comments. Anybody else?
I agree with you with regards to the FAR.
Anybody else?
No, I agree with the neighborhood character. I really think that, and the community board made it clear that that's a main concern of theirs as well. I think that something could be done here. I just wanted to not be a standout in the community. And especially considering that it's semi-detached.
Okay. Item number 4, 23115BZ, 5278 Post Road, the Bronx.
Okay. Oops. Sorry, now this one goes to a different post. Okay. Okay, we have proof of service of initial application to officials and of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. This case has been at the BSA since 2015 and was reviewed by the Community Board in 2016, at which they unanimously recommended denial without giving further explanation. February 15th, 2019 letter from the chair of the Community Board Land Use Committee, and who states he is also, quote, counsel to Community Board 8, states that the reason the board recommended denial was that the 7221 findings have not been met, and based on statements by the applicant to the board that other potential purchasers of the site could build larger buildings as of right. It actually included an email from the applicant's counsel that was rather astonishing to read, where council basically says, if you don't give us this, we'll just sell this to somebody who will do something bigger and you'll hate it. And I'm just warning you. Kind of astonishing. The letter, that letter from CBA Council is attached to a Community Board 8 2019 recommendation and a 2016 vote of Community Board 8 that agreed to allow the writer, who's a lawyer, to submit an amicus brief on behalf of the board. So it's kind of a complicated sort of designation of authority to this lawyer to write on the board's behalf. The writer states that based on his review of the most recent application materials, the comparables in the economic analysis are not comparable, and that there are serious traffic and safety concerns along the Broadway corridor on which the subject building faces. Councilmember Cohen in 2018 expressed adamant opposition to the application, citing neighborhood character concerns, and another letter from the council member in January of this year expressed concerns about proximity to the on and off ramps to the Henry Hudson Parkway and the impact of this project on traffic. The Broadway Community Alliance also submitted a letter in opposition, citing traffic, roadway, building scale, neighborhood character, and unit density concerns. And so the applicant needs to address all of those concerns, and I didn't see them doing that in any of the materials. On page 7 of their statement of facts, it states, quote, "R6 district envisions on the subject zoning lot more total mixed-use floor area than is proposed." I don't understand the statement at all. This is an R6, so only residential and community facility are permitted, so I didn't understand this mixed-use comment. And they're proposing use group 6, so. Also on page 7 of the statement of facts, it states that the use group 6 retail will be accessory to the use group 4 medical. Do you want to pick up on that?
I sure do. I don't see how it's considered accessory when it has doors that open onto Broadway, which invite the public in to come in. It's clearly retail. And actually, reading that part of the statement actually greatly distressed me. I felt it was that, coupled with the whole idea of it being a similar type of mixed-use building that is contemplated as of right, sounded disingenuous to me, because retail is not allowed in an R6 as of right, plain and simple. And then when you go on to try and characterize your retail as if it's not retail, I find that to be a problem. It's almost like trying to put one over on us, but you know what? We took a lot of time with this application. We read it very carefully. We caught it.
Indeed.
We don't agree.
Don't agree. Okay.
And I would say from a use point of view, from a neighborhood, if you just want to apply it from a neighborhood context, I don't think that is the location for a commercial use at all. There's no context of anything. There is smattering, there's like a few sprinkling of legally grandfathered commercial uses, but they're not near this site. So, and given its location and its approach from the Henry Hudson, this is just not the site you want to bring in. A use group 6, whether it's accessory or not, fact that it will be open to public will bring in more traffic, and that is another reason why use group 6 should not be permitted.
Right, and in addition to which, the hardships that I'll talk about later complained of, what's that have to do with the use group 6?
Right.
You
That's a
you try
separate
to
part of the-
overcome the hardships with some kind of a hardship solution, right? Okay, so I'd also, just to continue, like to have them explain what is meant by having filed the as-of-right drawings to, quote, "preserve financing options and preserve tax benefits," unquote. Wouldn't there need to have been permits and construction starts by date certain in order to get your 421A and so on? And also funding commitments? It doesn't sound like any of that was obtained, so I'm not sure what that's about. With respect to hardship, this is an R6, hence sky exposure plane district.
And height factor.
And height factor.
And I
Well,
do have a
height-
comment on that. I mean, given that this site is big, and I would want the applicant to show us a height factor building on
Yeah,
this
that's what
site. I mean, then you don't have to, you can place the building anywhere, and you can actually then place the building with an approach from Post Road, have the building sitting on top of this this boulder. And I have some actually great examples of cases I've worked on when I was at HPD where we worked around these boulders. So
Sure.
I can talk to those also, but I think that they need to justify why you cannot build an as-of-right using either sky exposure or height factor building. Why does it have to be a quality housing?
Alternate
building type
front
of-
setback.
Alternate front setback. There are many build forms that can be applied here, and they need to walk us through all of those options and show why it's not feasible.
Could we back
Agreed.
up, though?
Yeah, yeah.
And just talk about their uniqueness
Yeah,
claim?
yeah, so I didn't want to jump into
Before we even
that.
get to
Right, so
whether
I-
or not they've offered the right solution to
Right,
their
and
issue.
I threw that one in mostly because you're saying you have a hardship, but you're building a building that's the hardest building to build on the site, because height factor buildings have smaller floor plates, because because they're based on lot coverage, right? So, or open space ratio. So, that's why I was pulling that in. So, and so I also wanted to know why, for instance, they don't just apply for a height waiver under section 73-623, which is a quality housing available height factor, height waiver, and then they would have to build some income-restricted units, but, that's available, so why not just do it like that? So they need to go into a detail about why the combination of the two lots, here we go again, into a single zoning lot doesn't create the hardship complained of, as with two separate lots, one building would be entered from Post Road, such as was done at the site adjacent, which is lot 3057, with a complying, conforming seven-story residential building. It's very nice next door, right? And the other could be entered from Broadway, and then there would be no need to cut back the mountain to level the site out to meet Broadway. So they said they're ameliorating the condition. I don't see how that does
I think they get an
that.
advantage because if you're using the post road, you then get to use the various grade level changes and then get a grade level that is more to your advantage, and then you can call some of those uses in the cellar and the sub-cellar, which are not counted towards floor area.
Right, but
So
to me
here's-
also, the grade level differential is really only a factor once you combine both of those lots
Yes,
together.
right.
And so it is self-created. At least
Right.
that portion of the hardship claimed is self-created. Because if you're just a lot on Post Road, you have no grade differential. It's maybe 2
I'm
feet.
sorry,
if that much.
stop. Can you, whoever has the phones, please go out with your phones?
Or put your phone
No.
in silence mode.
Yeah, but,
Okay, go ahead.
okay,
So as I was saying, if your lot ends 100 feet back from Post Road, you're using Post Road, you don't have a grade differential.
right.
You only do when you're adding in the lot from Broadway.
right. So, okay, so the through lot creates the differential.
Right.
Right.
And then the other part of it, I think that Commissioner Shonda was getting at, was that when you're doing your zoning analysis and you're determining base plane, you get a benefit when you're on a really high slope because you get to average out.
Right.
And it creates sellers that are not sellers when you just have one frontage. So I think that's what she was getting at,
I
right?
agree with you, but one also could say that when you combine both lots, the grade change issue is when you start to excavate out that rock. That's providing a grade change.
Right.
Because even merging those two lots, you can go straight across from Post Road and rest on the rock on the Broadway side.
Right.
So the fact that you're talking about grade change means you've actually dug out all of that rock to make that pit down to Broadway.
Which is unnecessary unless you
Right.
insist on frontage on Broadway.
Right.
Accessible frontage, you don't need
Which
it.
is not, sorry,
sorry.
continue, carry on.
No, I think the frontage on Broadway, I'm not sure why you will have frontage of Broadway, even while sitting on top of the rock. And that's a great view. You're not
Yeah,
right
yeah.
on the traffic flow, you are above the traffic flow. You have this beautiful view of the parkland, and it's such a unique view that you create, that you have this rock boulder and you're sitting on top of it. And this is where I want to give out an example of a case that we worked on. It's a Roscoe Brown. It's an affordable housing project, and it had 80% of the site had these huge boulders that were like over 33 feet high.
What, say the name?
Roscoe Brown. and I'll give you the address. I have photos of it. I'll be more than happy to. It's at 3952 3rd Avenue in the Bronx. And this building has a rock that has over 200 feet. And it's 30 feet high, and it's on a city-owned site. But what they did is they just cut into the rock just for the section where they needed to put the structural walls, and they built the building over it that is about 3 floors above. And they just integrated the rock into the design, beautiful. And in the rear yard, they have used the rock as a way for climbing things and other things. So there are creative ways to do it, and this was the reason they did it, because the city didn't want to pay for blasting the rock. This was the easiest way to generate an affordable housing, and the only thing they needed was a waiver for parking, because if they had to provide parking, they would have had to blast the rock. If that's an issue, then that's a waiver we can discuss, the reduction of the parking.
So far,
Right,
the
but
only
first we
unique
have to
thing.
talk
about whether
or
there's
not
an
it's
A.
really
Right.
Is it really
Yeah, yeah.
unique?
Okay.
Before we even
Right,
get
exactly.
into the solution, I'm sorry, let me let you go, because we just keep jumping all over.
I'm trying to be polite.
They're all
I'm trying to-
integrated.
I think the only thing unique in this project is what they want to create. And if we go from that premise, that's their argument, is what we want to do is unique. There's nothing unique about this, besides what they want to do and what they created. And I really don't think we should afford this much more until they convince us otherwise, at least me otherwise. I don't see any reason to go into everything else that they can do, which is patent. It's much more obvious than this project.
It's much more obvious that
Anything else, all the other options that they have here are much more obvious than
what they're choosing
to
to do here.
do.
Right, because if we want to talk about the A finding, this entire portion of the Bronx is rock. In fact, this entire portion of Broadway, probably from Mishula Avenue all the way down to the subway, there is a grade differential between Broadway and the blocks just west of Broadway. That is what it is, because you're getting up the hill to Riverdale proper. So I really don't understand their argument that they have a uniqueness because they've got a grade differential. Everybody else does, and all of them have found, all of the ones that are located in that area have found creative ways to deal with that rock. Either building, putting their structural support into the rock and then having their frontage on the higher elevation, or even small homes that actually don't have cellars. They literally incorporate the boulder into their homes. One of my friends actually has that, where literally you walk out of the little parking garage and you're looking at the boulder that the house is sitting on.
fun,
So
right?
That would be creative if not everyone else was doing it. They're all doing that. This is a creative, unique project that they want to do. Everything else, everyone else has the same problem.
Commissioner Shea.
I just want to catch up on what Commissioner Brown just said regarding Bronx and how rocky formation is all over the place. The way this financial and this claimed hardship is reached, it was actually by comparing a typical site to the actual site, like we ask applicants to do. But amazingly, this is not done by the engineer. Langen created a geotechnical engineer. It's called Geotechnical Hardship Evaluation Report. But when I looked at this report, I didn't see any hardship evaluation. What I saw is evaluation of the SOE plus rock excavation cost. Hardship means the difference between what you need to spend and what you should have spent if you have a typical site.
Right.
But look at this, in the financial, at the very final page, you can see the hardship evaluation there. And this is amazingly, again, I'm saying this for like the 100th times, I'm getting nervous. This is done by the cost estimator. This is not his job. And it's done by the cost estimator claiming that a typical site in Bronx is just an air site. There is no rock excavation at all. Are you kidding me?
It's just a
True.
flat site.
Right.
So in other words,
It's a perfect
typical
site.
has
It's not
to be
just
typical
flat.
of the
Typical
area.
has to have that grade
It's not just
differential.
flat. It's not just flat. It's flat and it doesn't have any rock. So this is how the hardship, the amount of dollars in the hardship is obtained. It can be done this way.
Okay.
In addition to like tons of other issues with the engineering, starting from the way this building is designed. This building is designed architecturally and excavation-wise to maximize the claimed hardship. To say, look, we're gonna spend tons of money on this excavation and on this excavation support. So we have a hardship. Please give us the variance. And looking at again, Langen report, it's not a hardship report. Langen is talking about the site being shaped as a T section shape, or it's a T-shaped section. It's like a letter T. I'm not sure what does this do with geotechnical things.
Right.
And at the end, again, the heading in this report is geotechnical hardship evaluation. Where is the hardship? You gave me the excavation support plus the rock excavation cost. And we said that this tons of times before. Please give us details for the quantities that you present to us. And you know why I'm like insisting on getting these details? Look, if you look at the financial analysis, page 110 of the PDF, there is a table, and item number 2050.08. This is the only piece in the hardship or in the cost estimate that I got details for, and this is simply the rock excavation for the footings. They are saying that we have 54 footings, each is 4 feet by 4 feet, and the excavation depth is 3 feet. So this is, for me, this is crystal clear. 54 times 4 times 4 times 3, it gives me the quantity. But guess what? Because I got these details, when you multiply 4 by 4 by 3 times 54, you have to divide by 27 to get in cubic yard, and this wasn't done. And instead of $894,000, this will go down to just $30,000. That's why we ask people to give us details on the construction cost estimate, to catch things like that. But if you look at the big chunk here, that first item in the rock excavation, it's 14,000 cubic yard. How? Where? What's in the word? Nowhere. So this is unacceptable, getting
Okay,
quantities like that.
Okay, but we're not up, that's the B finding.
Yes,
We need to stay with the A for a second more, right? To be sure that we've covered the subject of this A, like, why
Yes, I
is the
understand.
site unique, right? So before we get into numbers like that, right? So I can see that there's no support, we knew that, right? There's no support in the financials for what they're arguing, which is that's like, once we're satisfied there's an A, then you dig deep
Yes,
into the B, right?
Yes,
But
I
at the
agree.
moment, what I'm seeing is the uniqueness study doesn't actually claim that rock is unique. It's claiming
it's
that
not.
the slope is unique.
Right.
And so, but none of the discussed hardship costs are slope-related.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, this is incorrect. What they are saying in the language, they are saying that the slope is unique, but what they are doing in the financials, if you look at that final page of the construction cost estimate, the revised one, page 112.
Commissioner Jessica.
Page 112 of the revised construction cost estimate. This is how they got to the hardship amount in dollars. The typical site is a site with, the actual site is a rocky formation. The typical site, look at the excavation, after the second heading, actual site foundation cost with earth excavation. Look at the rock excavation, nothing, zero. So they are claiming that a typical site is without rock. It doesn't have any rock at all.
Right, but
Pre-excavated.
but that's the thing is, the claim in the statement of facts, and even in the engineer's cover letter and so on, is not that the site is rocky. They're saying what's unique about this site, that's what they're saying in their writing. What's unique about the site, we admit it, there's rocks all over the place, but what's unique about this site is the slope. So we're going with slope. So that means that the removal of the rock, the excavation of rock, whatever it is that they have to do with rock is irrelevant, should be, in terms of the costs. And the only thing that should be relevant in terms of the costs is something to do with the site slope differential. I don't find any of that there, but in addition to which, it's because of the way they're designing the project to cut into the mountainside as far back as possible instead of approaching it from the high point, or instead of doing something that's on pilotis, on pilings, that just takes advantage of really a great site. Like is done, actually, that beautiful building that was done in the 70s up the hill for the school. Did you see that? It was built as dormitories. I actually wanted to point this out because I am often, and when we have these Staten Island projects, and I say, why can't you build this like people do in other countries that have slopes? In 1970-something, an architect, let's see, now I can't find it. Anyway, there's a school building that was built just across the street as a dormitory building, and it sits entirely on the rock. It doesn't land at all. It's a little bit like a spaceship, and it was built as a dorm for a school. Dormitories and residences are essentially the same typology, and was recently converted into an art center, because maybe they built another dormitory or something like that. So, yeah, it's actually interestingly named after Sandy Lindenbaum's wife. So that's one of the great land use lawyers, and built in 1980. Anyway, so I mean, but I think that's the issue is they claim the hardship is X, but they give you costs for Y. So it sounds like X isn't presenting any problems for them, because the only thing they're upset about is how they have to remove this gigantic boulder.
And I think, as I see it.
To create the slope differential.
Right.
That isn't there if they don't.
Right.
And as I said, I think the slope gives them an advantage. And
Gives them an advantage because of base plane.
yeah,
The rock itself gives them an advantage.
Right.
The way they steer the financial in the hardship evaluation thing that's done by the construction cost estimator. He said the footings, the concrete footings, the quantity for this is 260 cubic yards for both rock side and earth side. No, if the rock side is 260, the earth side could be 10 times that. So you're gonna spend much more money on what you're claiming is a typical site than a rocky formation. And this is not even indicated in the construction cost estimate nor in the hardship evaluation report by Langen. If you're doing excavation support, of course, rock is much better. If you're doing foundation, of course, rock is much better. If you're doing foundation design, of course, the foundation quantity, sizes, will be much less with rock than with earth. If you're talking about the seismic behavior of the building, and this is basics in the building codes, of course, rock formation is much, much better than an earth site. So where are these all positives
Right.
hidden? Why you're hiding all these positives and just giving us the rock excavation and the need for this slope, gigantic slope removal? I don't think the way the building is designed, and I do think the way the building is designed and the quantities are estimated plays like the main role in creating this hardship.
So I want to go way out there on a limb and say, all five of us don't seem convinced in the slightest by what has been presented to us. How much of a hearing do we have to endure whereby the applicant will just repeat what he has written that we are not convinced by?
Well, so the first part of it is we have to give the applicant an opportunity to be heard. basic.
Yes.
Right? And perhaps they may want to say, we heard you, and we'll just submit our response to you in writing, or we'll revise our project so that we're more responsive to explaining what's unique about our site, and the kind of a waiver that that uniqueness, whatever it is, because I don't know what it is, seems to present to us, right? So I don't know what's unique about the site. We see a building built right next door to this one just a few years ago that looks rather perfect to me, right? Fits in with the neighborhood, they seem to build it, it was very nice. You could, now that they own both sites, or will own both sites, they could do some kind of a platform that reaches out on top of that, top of the boulder, or cut off a little bit of it. It doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal. Because actually, when you look at the borings, maybe I'm misreading it, but it looks like the top of the rock is actually not so great, so it could be cut.
Right,
And then you get to something that's really solid, which, not being an engineer, but I'm learning as I
In the
read
top
these
portion
things.
of any rock formation,
good.
we call it weathered rock. because
Weathered
it's-
rock.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's exposed to the atmosphere, it's cracked, it has fractures. When it rains, water gets in these fractures. Yes, it's weathered rock, they said that
Mm-hmm.
in the geotechnical report. One of the borings, actually, the one that's close to Post Road, the rock is as deep as, I believe, 18 feet.
Oh, right.
Which is very reasonable, they are lucky on that. But the rest of the site, I understand that they have rock outcrops, which mean that you can't see rock
Yes,
at the surface.
right.
Why would you excavate 2 cellars
Right.
in rock? Why? I have seen a site in Jersey City, right on the river, and the difference between the elevation, between the back and the front, was 70 feet. And this site was designed like a step, like that. And they tried to minimize the excavation over there, because I believe over there, they couldn't get a variance. But because we're here in New York City, it's possible that we give it a shot.
Well,
That's why they want to dig that deep.
No, the only reason they want to do it is because that's the project they want.
Well,
You
right.
know, and
They do the drawing, and then they say, let's give it a whirl. But the other thing I want to note about this also is if you look at the design of the building, in addition to 2 cellars, which is quite nuts, that they're also setting the building back from Broadway 15 feet before they even start. So that pushes the building more into the rock. And then it's a setback building. So it's setting back, and which pushes the building even more into the rock. So they're actually going out of their way to cut back into the site instead of to use the site. So, yeah,
Excavation support-wise, if you look at the width of the T, the site is T-shaped, the flange is on Broadway, and if you look at the width, the little part in the back, close to Post Road, if you look at this little part that they're gonna dig down,
yeah.
I'm not sure why this part is not centered between the 2 neighboring buildings, so you can avoid underpinning or excavation supporting the excavation close to these buildings. It's that piece is placed immediately next to the building to the north.
Right.
Why? You could have centered this piece in the middle, so you can dig your excavation, put a little piece of beam, and then go slope, so you don't have to put extensive excavation support next to the adjacent buildings.
And I just want to throw in, because it sounds like we've just gone through every finding but the E finding, so I'm just going to throw that, not the, well, the neighborhood character finding, really. So it seems like the person who did the neighborhood character study was even admitting that he can't figure out really a good way to make this argument that it fits within neighborhood character. So what are the comparisons? We're comparing the heights of buildings in this area to sea level. So Post Road, which is at an elevation, I think, of 60-something feet above sea level, like 68 feet above sea level. So a one-story house has an elevation of like 78 feet, just to throw out a thing, right? So a 78-foot roof, therefore, is the same height as the proposed not measured off of sea level, or whatever, right? So it's so far-reaching, and we know that the city planners were not looking at NAVD 88 or Brooklyn Datum or any of that when they decided what the bulk regulation should be for this district. They were looking, as they always do, at a measurement either above base plane or above average curb, not above sea level. And they have not been able to demonstrate that 123 feet high over Broadway or 100 feet over Post Road is typical of the neighborhood. So there also, it seems to me, right? Which is the comment we got from all of the people who wrote in opposition, that it's too big for the neighborhood, in addition to everything else. So, okay.
There are many financial comments, but should I be, I don't even know if I should be saying them, because then the financial analysts will say, we'll make the corrections, but
No.
you still have a fundamental issue with your A finding.
With your A.
And your D.
Right,
So,
Yeah.
so financial comments to come, I suppose?
right, yes, and everything else, assuming that
You
there's
said
still, what'd you say?
He said, I hope not.
I agree with that.
Right, so far, right, we don't have a case, very clear.
Right.
It seems everyone's in agreement, we don't have a case, so it's called pulling a lot of rabbits out of your hat to make it turn into a case. I don't know what the rabbits look like.
We expect people, neighbors.
Yes, we expect testimony. There's a lot of opposition to this. Okay. All right, thank you, everybody.
This concludes the public review session for February 26, 2019.